Hi, this is Q-Tips. I'm Quentin, and this is just a couple facts about the 1 o'clock games for the week one of the NFL. Just going through each game real quick, giving some interesting thoughts. These are my opinions and my opinions only. First is the Dolphins and the Colts. Where to start? With Daniel Jones. I do not understand why they would go with Daniel Jones. I understand he may, in the short term, be better than Anthony Richardson, but we have seen Daniel Jones' ceiling. He played 5 years for the New York Giants. He had one okay season, and he got a huge contract off of that. Daniel Jones, and he also has had many shoulder injuries. He can hardly throw the ball deep. He is not an elite level quarterback. He's not even close. He's a barely above backup level quarterback. With that being said, I understand Anthony Richardson has a lot of faults. He is not a polished quarterback. He is probably not ready to be a starting quarterback. But the difference is there's a very low percentage chance, but there is a percentage chance that Anthony Richardson could become a very, very good, almost elite level quarterback because of his skill set. Also, the fact that he is younger than some of the rookies that were drafted this year, it is just absolutely insane to me that the Colts are going with Daniel Jones because you're basically admitting you don't actually want to win the Super Bowl. That's exactly what that admits. And I know people are thinking that's crazy to say the Colts would even be talked about in the Super Bowl. However, every team at this point should be thinking about the Super Bowl. And there is a 0% chance Daniel Jones is a worthy quarterback to take you deep into a playoff run. And with that being said, with the Dolphins, I mean, the vibes are just atrocious. We all know that. However, everyone is healthy right there. So if the Dolphins are healthy, their offense is usually very good. If Tua's out there, it's usually insane. I think they're being slept on because I'm sure it's going to blow up. I'm sure by week 5, Tyreek Hill will be, having his weird press conferences in the locker room talking about God knows what. But for now, they're healthy. That could be a great offense. I don't see the problem there. With the next game, the Cardinals and the Saints, this is a tricky one for those suicide pools. I feel like a lot of people are going to take the Cardinals, and I agree they should win. They should easily win. But Kyler Murray is such a wild card when it comes to quarterback that you never quite know what you're going to get with the Cardinals. I hope Marvin Harrison Jr. can take a step forward this year. I think he can. What I hope is that I don't believe there was anything wrong with Marvin Harrison Jr. They asked him to play the X receiver role the entire year. There are not many wide receivers that do that at the rate that he had to do that. It was up there with Nico Collins and A.J. Brown, some of the best receivers in the league. They didn't give him any easy buckets. They didn't give him any easy passes. I hope they move Marvin Harrison Jr. around a little bit, and I hope they get him some easy screen passes. Give him 2 or 3 catches so he can feel the ball in his hands without having to be 20 yards down the field to catch the ball. And then the Cardinals defense, as much as I think it's crazy, Rich Gannon has been doing some weird stuff there. And weird, I mean good and bad, but he's taking chances, which is exactly what you want out of a defense. They don't have the best roster defensively, but he's really trying different things. We'll see how that works out. And the Saints, I mean, Spencer Rattler, enough said. I mean, it's hard to say whether he's a worse person or worse quarterback. But from what I've seen, at least, on all the documentaries and everything he's been on, it's tough to judge which is worse. But Chris Olave, he's there. He's healthy. Hopefully he can, at least in fantasy, help you out because Olave has never had problem with targets and points. The problem with Olave is he's just normally not healthy because of his concussion history. Next, we have Raiders versus New England. I believe is a very exciting game. I think because it is a lot of new stuff going on there. I think Vrabel is a great coach. Everybody loves Vrabel. They think they're going to just become the Bill Belichick Patriots again, which I don't always believe. Trying to start up the old band is the answer. The Patriot way started to die after Tom Brady left. Belichick was there for many years after Brady. The Patriot way was not working. So I don't know if Vrabel's going to be able to do that. And don't get me wrong, I think Vrabel's a great coach. I think it was the great hire. I think it was the right hire. I'm just saying I don't know. I think Vrabel's getting a little more credit as a great coach than what he deserves. the Titans team, yes, they might not have had an all-star quarterback, but those Titans teams had a lot of talent, including, maybe the best running back. They had A.J. Brown for some of those years. Like, it was not a roster devoid of talent. They might not have had it at the quarterback position, but they had enough talent there to be exactly where they were, a perennial AFC playoff team. I don't believe Vrabel made them that much better. So we will find out. And I mean, the Raiders have Pete Carroll, who obviously was a great coach, hopefully still is. Very excited to see what Chip Kelly's doing. Hopefully he learned some things from the last time in the NFL. And I do believe the Raiders could be very good. I'm a little nervous in this position because it's a West Coast team traveling east. I know it's week 1. Geno Smith outdoors has not been historically great. However, the Patriots are the best player in this entire football game is probably not going to play, Christian Gonzalez. So that is obviously going to hurt the Patriots defense when the best player probably on the field is not there. So I'm excited to see what happens there. And I just want to say, remember, the first 3 weeks of the NFL football season is essentially preseason. So do not take any rash judgments from these first couple weeks. Do not go and trade players that you drafted highly because they had one off week. There were plenty of players last week that had an off week. I think Jamar Chase started with single-digit points. So just remember, the first week is not indicative of the entire year. Because last year, after week 2, the New Orleans Saints were the best offense in football, probably the best team in football if you look at the scores of the game. And we all know how that worked. Next is probably my favorite game of the 1 o'clock slate for the storylines is Steelers and Jets. Personally, I do not believe in Aaron Rodgers. I just don't like him. I think it's crazy to believe that he is going to be a good quarterback at his age. And I know everybody brings up, Brady played till he was 45. Brady was not a physical freak. He was a health freak. The man was afraid to eat strawberries or drink beer or whatever his TB12 method was. I do not know what it was. But what I'm saying is that man spent millions of dollars to stay healthy. That man did everything he possibly could to keep his body pliable and upright, and he was very into the health. There's a reason why he played the 45. It was not because of his arm talent. It was not because he could throw the ball. It was because he was extremely healthy and very sharp with his mind. Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, is drinking glasses of scotch on the McAfee show, taking basically what he's most famous for is he's the guy that takes all the drugs. He's, tripping on ayahuasca. Like, I just don't think his health regimen is the same as Tom Brady's was. Not to mention, he tore his Achilles a couple years ago. Brady had one big injury, but that was when Brady was still fairly young. It didn't come in his late 30s, early 40s. So I personally believe Aaron Rodgers is going to be a shell of himself because he looked slow and bad last year, even though he just hung his whole thing was he doesn't throw interceptions, which is fine, but he doesn't take any risks either. And sometimes when your team's not that good, you have to take risks. If you have a team like the Eagles and you're playing like Jalen Hurts, you don't need to take risks because the rest of your team is that good. And it's smart to not take risks. The same thing Mahomes does. But I just believe the Steelers I think Aaron Rodgers is cooked and it is going to look bad and it's going to look sad. But you never know week 1 because if he's healthy, this is the healthiest he's going to be is week 1. I'm personally rooting for the Jets. I have no skin in the game. I do not care. I just would love to see Fields get a little revenge. I would love to see that. I'm just basically against Aaron Rodgers. Nothing with either of these teams. I just really hope Justin Fields can have a good game, not just for fantasy. The next is Giants-Commanders. I'm very excited to see this because the Commanders are, the oldest roster in the NFL, the oldest starting team in the NFL. I feel like that's not talked about enough. Last year, they were also very old because they have a young quarterback, a great quarterback, one of the best young quarterbacks. However, he's undersized. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. Last year, he stayed fairly healthy. He had a little injuries in the middle there, but and they were just, the amount of fourth down conversion rate was astronomical. It was better than the Eagles tush-push fourth downs. It was the best ever. And I'm not a gambling man, but it's like they kept hitting on 16 in blackjack and kept not busting. When you're 87% converted on fourth down, and then not only where that it was a super high percentage. Anytime they did convert a fourth down on a drive, it ended in a touchdown. Now, some of those drives, they had multiple fourth down conversions in, but that's just astronomical numbers. The time that actually stopped was in the NFC Championship against the Eagles. But for the whole regular season, anytime they converted a fourth down, that drive ended in a score, which is just crazy numbers, just astronomical, unheard of. So you figure if some of that luck runs out, which it's not even, it's just regression to the mean. They could still be an excellent fourth down team and convert at 60%, which would be better than up there, probably at the top of the NFL. However, it's still a huge drop off in the way it goes for wins. I do believe the Commanders could be good. I'm very nervous about the age. Very nervous, especially on their defense. They have a lot of old players playing in premier positions, and last year they were able to stay healthy, and it worked out well. Aging NFL players do not tend to stay that healthy. So I am very nervous about that. And then the Giants, man, the D-line is great. Everybody talks about that. It's phenomenal. Maybe the best D-line on paper we've ever seen. Definitely could be there. Their offense is not good. Like, Brian Daboll is playing the same thing that he used to play with Josh Allen. Like, it is not a well-schemed offense. Everybody talks about Malik Nabers because of fantasy. Malik Nabers was great in fantasy. But if your receiver has to get 15 catches, he's getting 15 targets a game, that's not a good offense. None of the top offenses in the NFL are focused that much on one player. The only other offense last year that was focused that much on one player was the Raiders with their tight end. And guess what? They did that because they could make him look really good. They weren't winning any games. The Giants don't have enough talent on offense to be balanced enough to play good football. They can play great fantasy football for us, and a lot of us love that. But the difference is fantasy football and real NFL football are drastically different things. If you ask coaches what they would want if they had their choice, they would say great defense, running the ball, protecting the ball. That's it. They're not the best. That's not the highest scoring things in fantasy football. That is what a lot of people have misunderstood in the NFL lately. The Kansas City Chiefs are not trying to play fantasy football. The Eagles are not trying to play fantasy football. There's a lot of, like, the good teams, even the Bills went away from that. That's why they got rid of Stephon Diggs, because they had to keep him happy and force him the ball. They'd rather just let Josh Allen do whatever the defense is giving him. That's why it's all just a bunch of lateral receiving levels, a bunch of players that are about the same. So I'm very intrigued to see that game, because I'm wondering if the Commanders' offensive line can hold up, because that D-line is coming. And I don't know how many hits Jaden Daniels is going to be able to take this year. I really hope he can stay healthy. I hope they can keep him upright. The next game is the Panthers-Jags. This is the expansion game. Both these teams were added 25 years ago, I believe, or 30 years ago. So kind of cool little story there. The one thing I don't understand about the Panthers is the Bryce Young love. I mean, he is another player. I really believe he's not tall enough to ride this ride. I would be shocked if Bryce Young is playing in 2028 as a starting quarterback, because I think they over believed what they saw in college. And yes, there's been some quarterbacks that have been smaller and shorter and whatnot. I know they survived, but like, Kyler Murray is thicker. Russell Wilson had some weight on him. Like, Bryce Young looks like a child out there. And everybody's saying, oh, last year, he started to turn it on at the end. Well, he went from like the absolute worst quarterback in the NFL, like undisputably, from his rookie year, beginning of his second year, got benched, and then he came back in and he went from like the worst quarterback to like the 22nd best quarterback. It's not like he like launched into some amazing realm of quarterbacking. It's not like he was a starter in fantasy. It's not like he was one of these top-ranked quarterbacks, and now everybody is talking about him like he's just taken a step forward. I still believe there's a better chance of him being out of the league, or, well, he was a first pick, so he's not going to be out of the league in a couple years, but I would be I think there's a higher percentage of him not starting the 2028 season than him just taking the step forward and becoming an elite quarterback. With that being said, I still think, T-Mac is going to be fine in fantasy because it's going to be one of those teams that they're not good in real life. But I think they're just going to focus on him because they want to make that draft pick work. So he could have like a Malik Neighbors season of last year where he's just getting all the targets, all the throws, and that's it. And, Chuba Hubbard will get it on volume. But I do not see the Panthers taking a step forward. I think they will be picking in the top 3 again next year. The Jaguars are a wild card because they do have talent on offense. They have all the talent. And is Trevor Lawrence actually a good quarterback? We do not know this because, yes, he had Doug Peterson. That was probably the best coach he had. But Doug was running the same offense he ran with the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl, which, yes, worked when the Eagles ran it. But the defenses catch up. Like, he needed to make changes. So hopefully now, everybody's high on, Mr. Duval. So we'll see if he can actually coach him up, get him some more looks, actually make these, get him some easy plays. We'll see. But, Trevor Lawrence has missed a lot of throws in his NFL career. So we will see. Last game at 1 o'clock is Bucs-Falcons. This game is... It's probably one of the games that not a lot of people are going to be watching. Buccaneers, I think, are one of the better NFC teams. I do believe Mike Evans will be fed today. I think he'll get a lot of targets. I think Emeka Egbuka, everybody's really high on him. But when they drafted him, everybody said Emeka Egbuka was the guy that was the best NFL-ready, essentially wide receiver 2 to 3. Like, he was going to be a solid wide receiver in the NFL. Like, no doubt about that. But he was never going to be like a Brian Thomas Jr., a Malik Neighbors, a Justin Jefferson, what they hope Marvin Harrison Jr. could be. Like, he was never going to be an elite wide receiver. But everyone in fantasy right now thinks that he is just going to become this elite wide receiver because he's given this opportunity, which I believe he could be really good. I think his ceiling is more like wide receiver 2 or 3 at best in fantasy because as long as Mike Evans is healthy, Baker Mayfield is getting the ball to Mike Evans. Like, if the Buccaneers want anybody to be successful, they want Mike Evans to be successful. If they could have that 1,000 yards by week 5, they would do that. That is all they want is 1,000. They want to make the playoffs, and then they want Mike Evans to get 1,000 yards so he can set that record. So I do believe that. I believe Bucky Irvin, Rachaad White, both should have good games today. There should be a lot of passes to them because that's how you beat the Falcons defense is you throw the ball to the running backs. The Falcons, on the other hand, anything could happen. I believe Michael Penix Jr., I believe keeping Kirk Cousins is actually smart. I don't understand why all these people are so upset that they're keeping Kirk Cousins at such a high price. The idea when they drafted Kirk Cousins, or when they drafted Penix, was to keep Cousins, let him play 2 years, have Penix back him up in case he got hurt. Well, guess what? Penix seems to be better, but you still wanted 2 quarterbacks. Now you still have 2 quarterbacks in case Penix get hurt. Penix is a young guy. Everybody thinks these young quarterbacks, just because of who he is, because of, what he looks like, that he's, young and mobile. Michael Penix Jr. is not a mobile quarterback. He does not run the ball. If he could easily get hurt, especially with them losing that offensive lineman, which is protecting his blind side. If Michael Penix Jr. goes down, which is a high probability, it's the NFL, they have a very good quarterback to back him up, just like it would have been in reverse. If Kirk Cousins was out there, you would want Michael Penix Jr. there as your backup. They're not paying any different money. They'd already, when they drafted Penix Jr., it was these 2 years they were going to pay Kirk Cousins and have Penix Jr. as a backup. It's the same amount of money being allocated to the quarterbacks. Now it's just in reverse. So yes, it looks weird. However, it's exactly the right idea because God forbid anything happens to Penix Jr., it'll be the same thing as them drafting him last year. It'll be failing into success. Everybody thought it was the dumbest idea when they drafted Penix Jr. Now it looks brilliant. If Penix goes down and Kirk Cousins is there, it's going to be the same people that are yelling about Kirk Cousins should be traded. Kirk Cousins shouldn't be on there. He's getting paid too much to be the backup. They'll be like, oh, look at how smart the GM of the Falcons were. Now they have this high-level quarterback to back him up. So that's all that's there. I think the Falcons, you never know. You never know with that team because, they have Bijan Robinson. Tyler Algier is still there. They have, Kyle Pitts, but they still have receivers. They have all the makings of a good team. They just can never put it together, mostly because they have no pass rush, and that defense is very suspect. But we will see. It's beginning of week 1. I'm excited. We'll see how it all plays out. But with that, that's all I got for today.